Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be going through the best build for every single brawler in the game right now as quick as possible. Of course, we're going to be including Ash. The last time I did this video was about 4 months ago. We've had, I think, 2 or 3 sets of balance changes, a ton of gadgets added, and of course the meta has changed a ton of times. So this is going to be updated list, and also it's going to include all the new brawlers that the last one didn't. So before we get into it, of course, make sure you're subscribed, because 65% of you guys are not subscribed. It really helps me out, so I'd appreciate making sure you're subbed if you're not already. Of course, make sure you're liking the video, and if you're picking anything up in this update, make sure you're using code TOM in the shop if you would like to support me. Let's go right into it. Okay, so starting off here with Shelly, we're going to be starting off with the Trophy Road Brawlers, then working our way towards the Legendaries and Chromatics at the end of the video. Starting off with Shelly, I'd use Clay Pigeons everywhere. This new buff is really good. Whereas for the star power, you can use Band-Aid in Showdown, but personally, I think Shell Shock is great with the new Clay Pigeons, because basically you super them and then you can just auto-aim them with the Clay Pigeons gadget and pretty much kill them every single time. So this is a really OP combo right now. Okay, so for Nita, I like using this gadget, Fax Fur, and also the Bear With Me star power in most situations, but you can, if you want, use Hyper Bear and this gadget. So use the Hyper Bear, this one, and also this gadget if you're playing like Heist and Siege, because if you get a bear on the Ike or the safe, it's going to destroy it. So for Colt then, everybody uses this gadget. It's way better, Silver Bullet. And then I would say like 75% of pros use Slick Boots, but you can use the range if you want. But as I said, you know, most pros do use Slick Boots because it probably is better overall. Okay, then so for Bull, you're going to want to use Stomper and also Tough Guy, but you can use Berserker if you want in Heist. Okay, then so for Jessie, I recommend using Spark Plug and also Energize, but if you want, and if you're playing Heist, you can use Recoil Spring, because obviously you're going to get a lot of damage if you get this turret on the safe. Okay, so Brock just got buffed. Brock is so good right now. This gadget, Rocket Fuel, better everywhere, 2.7k. It's absolutely insane. Make sure you're using 4th Rocket in every single mode except for in Heist and Siege, where you want to be using Incendiary to get that extra damage on the safe and the Ike. Okay, then so for Dynamite, I really recommend using Satchel Charge, which is the stun gadget, and also the Demolition star power. And you can use Dynadrum if you're absolutely insane with it, but for most people like me, I just like using Demolition. Okay, then so for Bo, I really recommend using Circling Eagle on any maps with a ton of grass, for example Snake Prairie, but like 95% of the time you're going to want to be using Snare Bear to get that stun off from your mines. As for the gadget, I like using Super Totem on maps that are a bit more passive, like Ice 4, like Double Swoosh, like Backyard Bowl, and also like Snake Prairie and other bounty maps. Every bounty map you should be using this Super Totem gadget, and pretty much everywhere else you're going to want to be using Tripwire, because it's just really good to be able to activate your mines. As for Tick, it's pretty easy. You want to pick the Last Hurrah gadget and the Well-Oiled star power. Okay, then so for 8-bit, you should be using the plugged in star power everywhere, and make sure you're using the cheat cartridge gadget everywhere, except for if you're playing Siege and Heist, you can use extra credits if you want to. Okay, then so for Ems, you should be using the Hype star power, and of course there is only one gadget. Okay, then so for Stu, you should still be using that second gadget. It's still gonna be much better than that first one, even though it did get nerfed. As for the star power, again, Gasso Hill got nerfed a little bit, so it's gonna be a little bit worse now, but you should be using it on most maps. If the map's really open, like Shooting Star though, probably recommend going Zero Drag. It's gonna give you that distance boost, helping you reach those enemies on the longer range maps. Okay, getting into the rare brawlers, starting off with El Primo. So you can use pretty much both star powers and both gadgets. Very situational. I like to use this gadget in Brawl Ball and other modes as well. It just depends. If your comp has got like long range brawlers and you're planning to break the walls, say if you're using a B Pam Primo comp, then that's when I would go the Astro Belt to kind of break up the map. It just really depends on what you're playing. But if you don't really want to break the map, you're playing with maybe throwers, short range brawlers, you probably want to go with this gadget, especially in Brawl Ball, because you can yeet people over you when they're trying to score, and also when you're trying to score, they're in the goal, you can shoot, yeet them, and you're going to score. As for the star power, I like going El Fuego in Siege and Heist. Honestly, in Brawl Ball, I really like Meteor Rush. You can use either, it kind of depends which you prefer, but yeah, in Siege or Heist, probably would go with El Fuego. In Brawl Ball and other modes, I'd probably go with Meteor Rush. As for Barley then, my favorite build with Barley is the sticky syrup mixer. So this is like the slow gadget, and then you have the extra nauseous, which is of course the damage star power, but honestly you can use any build, whatever you prefer, with Barley. Sometimes I like to go with the herbal tonic, but most of the time I am using this damage star star power. Okay, then as for Poco, obviously we had some star power and gadget buffs, but I still think the tuning fork, the first gadget is going to be better, and of course course, Decapper, which is the first star power just for healing your teammates, but I guess on some short range maps, you could probably play Screeching solo now. As for Rosa, I generally think 95% of the time, Unfriendly Bushes is the better gadget, but of course, if there's a little bushes, you probably want to go with that first gadget. Of course, for the star power, I like to use Plant Life most of the time, but I guess if the map doesn't have any grass, it does make sense to use Thorny Gloves. Okay, as for Rico, this one is very easy. Make sure you're using the Bouncy Castle gadget, and you are using the super bouncy star power. Okay, then so for Daryl, this one's pretty easy. I like using Tar Barrel. Most of the time, you're gonna pop this gadget and then super in. It's gonna slow the enemies, meaning you slow them down, obviously, and then you're gonna be able to hit that super, get the kill a little bit easier. Of course, for the star power, I think still Hoops is the much better star power. Okay, then as for Penny, the much better gadget is gonna be Captain's Compass. As for the star power, Balls of Fire is much better. Most of the time, if you're playing Siege though, you can go Last Blast if you would like. Okay, then as for Carl, I recommend going Flying Hook everywhere. So for the star power then, I recommend going Power Throw 95% of the time. If you're running a healer comp, say like a Poco, Pam, and a Carl, I would recommend going Protective Pirouette because that healing is going to get more value if you have a shield on you. Okay, then as for Jackie, the Counter Crush star power is the much better star power, and Jackie only has one gadget. Okay, getting into the epic brawlers then, starting off with Piper, Homemade Recipe gonna be the best gadget 95% of the time. If you're playing Power League and have, say, two aggressive brawlers like a Mortis and a Buzz, maybe you do want to go this first gadget so you can keep them away a little bit easier. As for the star power, if you're playing maps like Hard Rock Mine where you have that grass in the middle where you're going to be playing as a Piper, you want to be using Ambush. Of course, if you're playing maps like maybe Safe Zone where you don't have grass directly in the center of the map where you're going to be playing most of the time, probably you want to go Snappy Sniping. Okay, then as for Pam, Pam's new gadget is so good. Scrap Circuit is the much better gadget, and as for the star power, I choose Mama Squeeze, and you can just yeet that turret at people and it does 800 damage a second. It's amazing. Okay, then so for Frank, I think Active Noise Cancelling is the much better gadget, and as for the star power, me and like 90% of pros, well 95% of pros use Sponge, but honestly I think Power Grab is a little underrated and you can use it if you want. Okay, then as for BB, the better star power is going to be Home Run, like 85% of the time. Again, if you're using a healer comp, obviously with a Poco, you probably want to go Batting Stance because you're getting that shield, so you're going to be getting more value out of those heals. As for the gadget, you only have one gadget with BB. Okay, then so for B, every pro I know uses Honey Molasses, and also they use the Insta B load star power. Okay, then so for Nanny, I think the Warp Blast is the better gadget just for Heist, and also you want to use Tempered Steel with Warp Blast in Heist. And then as for every other mode, you want to use Returning to Sender and Autofocus because that's going to be the better build everywhere else. Okay, then so for Edgar, Fisticuffs is going to be the better star power. As for the gadget, Let's Fly is better in 3v3 modes, and Hardcore is going to be better in Showdown where you have more time to just sit around and get that super normally. So for Griff then, Keeping the Change is the much better star power, and of course Griff only has one gadget. Okay, then so getting into the Mythic, starting off with Mortis here. So I think honestly you can use any kind of build you want with Mortis because both star powers and gadgets are very good, but most pros I know use Combo Spinner, and as for the star power, they're both really good, but I think Creepy Harvest is slightly better, but honestly Cold Snake is very good as well. Okay, then as for Tara, you guys know I am an expert Tara, so for the gadget I would use Support from Behind every single map in the game except for on Snake Prairie where I'd use this first gadget. As for the star power, I think they're both very good. It's really personal preference what you prefer. I like to use Black Portal because I think it's better. Okay, then as for Jean, Magic Puffs is the better star power. 95% of places, that 5% is of course Solo Showdown where you want to be using that Spirit Slap because you have no teammates to heal. As for the gadget, I still think Lamp Blowout is going to be the better gadget, but I do think we're going to see some more Vengeful Spirits on bounty maps, in particular like Shooting Star and Purple Paradise, which isn't even on ladder. Okay, then as for Max, Phase Shifter is going to be the better gadget absolutely everywhere, and then I think if you're playing Solo Showdown, you should probably use Run and Gun, but everywhere else I'd recommend using the Supercharged star power. As for Mr. P, I like to use the Service Bell gadget absolutely everywhere, and then I like to use the Handle with Care star power on those more open maps. If you're playing a really close range map, say like you're playing Lane on Super Stadium, maybe you want to use a Rolling Door because you don't necessarily need that extra range too much. Okay, then so as for Sprout, the build changes pretty much on a map and mode basis, so it's really hard to tell you exactly what the better like composition kind of is, but the general rule is you want to use Garden Mulcher and Photosynthesis at the same time. Generally on maps where it's quite grassy, we can get value out of this gadget and star power. And then as for like Siege, you want to be using Transplant obviously so you can pick up that wall, throw it down, block the Siege boss, and obviously you might as well use Overgrowth. So you kind of want to to use this build on some maps with maybe less grass, and then maybe use the garden mulcher and photosynthesis build on maps with a little more grass. Okay, then as for Byron, Malaise is literally the pros' biggest secret right now. That's why all the pros are playing Byron. Malaise so OP, and of course you don't have a second gadget. So as for Squeak, then the super sticky star power is the much better star power, especially since Squeak got this buff. It's a lot easier to hit that super, so now when you hit them, they're gonna be slowed. It's amazing. Of course, Squeak doesn't have a second gadget. Okay, then getting into the legendaries, of course, starting off with Spike, I use Life Plant 99% of the time. You can use this first gadget if you want though in Heist. As for the star power, I use Curveball, I'd say 75% of the time. So you want to use Curveball on those long range maps, especially against longer range comps. As for Fertilize, you want to use it on the shorter range maps against tankier comps. So let's give you an example here. If you're playing a Power League game, they have a Poke Double Tank comp on, say, Super Stadium. It's a short range map and they have tanks, so it's a great like opportunity to use Fertilize. And then, for example, again, if you're playing on Backyard Bolt, you're playing against a Piper, Brock, and a Belt. That's a long range comp on a long range map. That's where you want to use Curveball. Okay, then as for Crow, I like to use Slow In Toxins everywhere, but you can, I guess, if you want, use this first gadget in like solo showdown. As for the star power, I like to use extra toxic in 3v3 modes, and then in showdown I like to go with Karen Crow because it's a little bit better for those 1v1 matchups. Okay, then as for Leon has got a super OP gadget now, so I'd recommend using Lollipop Drop in every single 3v3 mode, and you can use it in showdown if you want, but of course you can use this Clone Protector gadget as well in showdown because it's very good at scouting people. As for this, I like to use Invisiheal on those short range maps. We can get more value out of it, and I guess you can use it in solo showdown. It really just depends kind of what you want, but I like to use Invisiheal, I'd say 75% of the time. On those long range maps, I do recommend going Smoke Trails like Shooting Star, where you actually need that speed to kind of get across the other side, and I guess you can use this one on solo showdown sometimes if you want. As for Sandy, then the second gadget, Sweet Dreams, is going to be the better gadget pretty much absolutely everywhere, like 99% of the time. And then I like using Rune Sands, honestly, but in Power League, because you know the enemy is not going to have a Sandy, so you don't need Rune Sands to kind of scout the enemy's Sandy super. I'd probably say Healing Winds is probably going to be better in Power League when you know they don't have a Sandy. As for Amber, I like to use Wild Flames. It's the much better star power, allowing you to get your super a lot quicker. It's so good. And as for the gadget, Amber doesn't have a second gadget. Okay, then so getting into Gale, I definitely think both of Gale's star powers and both of his gadgets both have use cases and pros and cons, but I'd say overall I think Twister is probably better, but you can use Spring Ejector on some maps. Honestly, like Split, Spring Ejector is great, and also Twister is great, so it's really hard to pick, but I think most of the time you want to be using that Twister. And as for Freezing Snow, the general rule is that on open maps you want to be using Freezing Snow because obviously it's a bit harder to push an enemy against a wall with Blustery Blows because there's less walls. So on the close range maps, probably use Blustery Blow and use Freezing Snow on those more open maps. Okay, as for Surge, so for the star power, Serve Ice Cold is obviously going to be better everywhere except for in solo showdown, where To The Max is going to be better, and Surge only has one gadget. Okay, as for Colette, Max Tax is going to be the better star power against pretty much everything, but if you're playing Power League and you know the enemy is going tanks, Pusher is a great counter to tanks, so make sure you're using Pusher if you know you're playing against one or more tanks. And of course, Colette only has one gadget. Okay, then so for Lou, this new gadget, Cryo Syrup, is absolutely amazing. Basically turns your super into a nuke where you can chuck it on them and then gadget them, and they're pretty much going to be stunned as well if you are using this super cool star power, which obviously really helps you cycle those supers because you're stunning people, allowing you to get 3 shots on them, allowing you to get another super. So yeah, super cool. And also Cryo Syrup, amazing combo. Okay, then so for Ruffs, the general rule is to use field promotion when you have at least one thrower in your comp, but honestly, if you're using like a Pampoko and you're just sitting with Ruffs the whole game, then use field promotion. Obviously, if you're using this star power, make sure you're getting use out of it. Otherwise, if you don't have a thrower, you're trying to break up the map, you're trying to make it as open as possible, make sure you're using the Air Superiority gadget because it's going to be able to break walls, obviously, and add a little bit of damage. As for the gadgets, Take Cover is usually the safe bet to be the better gadget, but honestly, I sneakily like this Air Support, man. It could be so good, controls a huge area of the map. So I do think some maps like for Air Support could definitely be used, particularly like Canal Grande, and also I think on Triple Dribble, I really like using the second gadget. Okay, then as for Belle has 2 of the worst star powers in the entire game, but positive feedback even after the nerf is still much better just because it doesn't rely on you hitting your super. So yeah, I still think the first star power, and obviously Belle does not have have a second gadget yet. Okay then, so for Buzz, the second star power is much better. Every pro is using it now. People started off using this one, but yeah, honestly, everyone is using this Eye Sharp star power now, to be honest. And obviously, Buzz doesn't have a second gadget yet. Okay then, and as for the new Brawler Ash then, so in my opinion, the first star power is gonna be better. So this one essentially doubles the rage that you get per shot when you have maximum ammo. So when your ammo is max, it's gonna go yellow, and then that next shot will essentially, if you hit it, will give you double the rage a normal shot would get. So I think it's gonna be better. It's gonna allow you to build up your rage a lot quicker. Whereas the second one basically means after you get max rage, your like broomstick kind of, your shot goes, or your reload speed gets 30% quicker, so you can shoot more. But obviously when you're at lower rage, it's gonna go up by like less than 30%. So honestly, in my opinion, the first star power will be much better. And obviously Ash only has one gadget right now. Okay guys, that's gonna wrap it up for the video. If you did enjoy this video, if it did help you, please consider subscribing and also liking the video. And if you're picking anything up in the shop, make sure you're using a credit code. If you want to support me, you can use code TOM. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.